I'm Lauren Giles, and what I'm going to show you today is a couple ways where you can use technology either in the classroom or online remote to build up your courses to give a paperless quiz. So for both of these, I'll give an idea of how I use them when we're in person, or, say Governor Wolf has to close Pennsylvania and we have to go back to red. I'll give you an idea for how to use them remote too. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you here. And the first thing I want to show you is, this is Maddie and Sophie. Hopefully they will not bark during this short video, but if you hear them, they're to blame. The way that you're going to access Microsoft Forms is you can get there through the hub. I usually just go through my email. So here we're seeing my just blank email, and I go to these dots right here. When you click those, you can see Microsoft Forms, and I've already done that for us right up here. So when you click that, it's going to bring you here, and you can just create a new form. Now, one way that I've seen this used is to give a quiz. But you'll notice that I have lots of tabs open. So depending on the type of quiz and the amount of security that you need to have for that quiz, you may not want to use that as your primary source. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give this quiz to my students either in person or just send a link to them to gather some information from them. So maybe the question that I'm asking is, answer these 4 questions, and it is based on content, and I'm gleaning their understanding of what we've covered in class. Maybe I'll use it as a pre-lab assignment and say, what do you know about this topic based on your reading? So I can get a little bit of an idea of how much I need to cover this in the classroom and how much they already know, so we can just dig right in. But I have seen people give exams this way as well. So you're going to create a new form, and it's pretty user-friendly. You can title the form here, so I've just been calling them Demo Fall 2020. You can give a description if you'd like, and it's even going to start making some suggestions if you want to do a theme. We're just going to keep it basic today. So whenever you see this icon right here, this means that you can add an image. It's pretty universal. You'll see it in Blackboard. You'll see it across the other platforms that I show you today. And if you wanted, you could add an image to this just by clicking it, and then you're going to choose what file you want. Of course, I don't have an image on my desktop, but you could choose it and just put it right into there, and it would show up right alongside your font, right alongside your text. So we're going to add something new, and you can choose a couple different versions. This would be like, if you choose the choice one here, it's almost like a multiple choice question. So what is your favorite color? Black ink or blue ink? Just, coming off the top of my head. And students, when they see this, would just check the box. So you also have the option for text questions where students would type the answer. You can make it required or not required by toggling with this switch. And one thing that you'll notice is that it's been saving as we go as I make changes. So if anything were to happen, you're plugged in and you have a power outage or something like that, you're not going to lose that file because it does save. You just have to come back to re-access that. You can also do a rating. So, how much did you like yesterday's guest speaker? And students will get to rank the speaker, or however you would choose to use that. And then you also have the option for a date. So if you ask somebody for, I don't know, what date would you prefer to give your presentation, then give them a couple options, or they might tell you never, and then they would get to choose. That might help you to organize a schedule as well. So a couple different ways to use that form. We've got a tab for responses. Right now it's going to be blank because we haven't deployed this to anyone, but it will start populating your information here. You can share it. Here's your link to copy. So I put that either in an announcement in my Blackboard, send it to an email, do both. And I also sometimes send it to my teams. I like to duplicate in my teams what I also send to the email in case a student sees one or the other first. So that gives you some of the basic functionality, and if you have any extra questions, then I'll address those in the discussion in the discussion section. But what I next want to show you is Socrative. So Socrative is something that I use to give quizzes. It will grade for you, but it's not connected to Blackboard. So I'm going to show you at the end how we can get those scores. You do have to manually type them into Blackboard, but you get them right away. It auto grades it for you, so you're just copying over the numbers. When you come to Socrative, what you'll see is this option to log in. You're going to want to choose the teacher login. And if you choose the student login, it's going to bring you to this. You have to have a room name and then you're going to join it. We'll talk about what that means for the students in a minute, but for us, we want the teacher login. This is what gives you the functionality to write those quizzes. And automatically you see this landing page where here we're looking at things that we can launch. So a quiz is just your traditional style quiz. It asks them the questions and you have some control over those functions. I'll show you those. The space race is more of a game. And then the exit ticket here is something that's always going to give them the same 2 first questions. And then the third question is one that you have to write. So these 2 are pre-populated and the third is one that you come up with as the instructor. So I often use this for my attendance. And the first question says, how well did you understand today's material? So the students will answer that. The second question is, what did you learn in today's class? So they'll have to type something. They can't just, get on from home because they know that I launch it every day and tell me something that they learned. The third, again, you have to write this. So when I'm in the classroom, I just put this right up on the board, and sometimes it's a question about the content because I'm looking to see if they have the information. Maybe I'll give them a bonus point if it's a hard one and they get it correct. Sometimes I'm going to give more of a what time would you do your presentation type of question, or a survey question, literally anything you want to ask them, because you have to write it. So with each of these 3 questions, they're going to be displayed exactly as you see here. So with the first 2, they had the multiple choice option. They'll see that on whatever they log into to do it. So if it's tablet, a phone, a laptop, that's what they'll see. So this is literally just going to say, please answer the teacher's question. So if you use the exit ticket and you are doing a remote section, you'll just want to have something like a slide that you display on your screen and share that screen to your students. And then they're going to have the information they need to be able to answer this question. Now let's go back to our home page. What you also see here is the option for a quick question. And so this is if you just want to ask them one quick question. You need to just cancel the exit ticket we were just in. And again, you're going to give them the question. They're going to answer true or false. So sometimes I'll do this in person or in remote section to see if my students are paying attention, get them to respond, and it keeps them engaged. So you can just ask that quick question, true or false, Ms. G, that's what my students call me. True or false, Ms. G is wearing a green shirt today. And if they weren't listening, then they have to log on and answer the question true or false. They're not going to know the answer. And then you kind of catch them red-handed for maybe, playing games on their phone while you teach. But again, I can also launch all of this from my phone, so I can monitor that in live time. So if I ask the question, I can launch it from here, and I can just watch those responses come up without having to change anything on my computer screen. But you can also do them, with multiple tabs open, just like you see me having here. So we'll go ahead and finish this because I want to show you the quiz. So first, I have made a demo quiz And here we just have a couple different types of questions, and Socrative just offers the 3 styles: multiple choice, true or false, and short answer. So when you go to create these, you can edit them with this pencil here. And, you know, what is your favorite color? It pre-populates some options for you. So let's say we want to do, you know, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. And maybe I wanted to stop at blue, but I've made too many options here. Again, I can close it with the X, and you see that we can also add an image. Here, this also gives the option for rationale. So if there was a correct answer to what is your favorite color, red is the best color, this would appear to your students, right? So they're gonna answer the question on their device, and say they say red, they're gonna get this message that says red is the best color. If they say orange, they're gonna get the same message that says red is the best color. So I'm gonna show you when we launch the quiz how to choose those options, because if you want them to be able to go back, you wanna keep it from showing them the correct answer and the rationale. So more to come in a second, but back to building the quiz itself. Here we see now our updated question, and let's say I wanted to duplicate that. This icon here means just copy the question as is. And what is your favorite color? Let's do blue or black ink. And we're just gonna close those off. Oh no, black ink is superior to blue ink. And so you just click and type. It's pretty quick once you get the hang of it. Same thing with true, false, and it does offer you the option for rationale for each of these questions. The one thing that I do want to make you aware of is I teach anatomy and physiology. So when you have a question that has multiple answers, you have to be a little bit careful with how you format that if you want the computer to grade it for you. So my question here, name a bone in the arm. There are really 3 arm bones, the humerus, the ulna, and the radius. I've given them each their own answer box. And the reason is because if I did ulna, radius, humerus, sure, that's the right answer. But I'm programming this to only score it that way if my students put ulna, radius, humerus in that order with commas and a space in between. And, you know, plus that doesn't really answer my question. So if you want them to list it, right, if we say name the bones in the arm, you can, only with short answer, not program the answer in. That does make it so that you have to score the question. So it just depends on, you know, how much time you want to invest into this. If it's something for participation, for example, and you just want to see that they can answer the question instead of blanking out, then maybe you want to leave it blank. Or you can just structure your question in a way that forces them to answer. So then in that instance, because we have 3 bones, we don't want to just program the one. And that gives you a pretty good idea of how to use the Socrative. Again, more questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the discussion question. But one thing that you do need to do is you need to save your work. This doesn't auto-save for you. So we're going to save and exit. And now this is taking us to the quiz bank. So we're just at this second tab. So if you want to access that from this main screen, again, you're just going to go right to this tab and here's everything. The way that I use this in my classroom is I have my microbiology lab students test on the procedure at the very beginning of class every day. So the one thing that Socrative does not do for you is it doesn't time it. So I just set a timer on my watch and I say you have 5 questions, you have 5 minutes, go ahead and start. And the way that you're going to launch this to your students is you're going to go to the quiz. And let's say we'll do aseptic transfer. So you choose the quiz that you want to launch and then you hit next. And we need to choose our delivery method. So what I usually do is instant feedback, but if you don't have to remember what they all mean, because you can just click this little information circle. With the instant feedback, students are going to go ahead and answer those questions in order. They can't go back and change their order, so it is going to give them that feedback. Like when I typed black ink is the best ink, they would see that message regardless of whether or not they got the answer right or wrong. And so then they would move on to the next question, and I can see those live results. Here's where you set your preferences, so you want to make sure that they put their name on it. You can shuffle the questions, you can shuffle the answers if they're sitting next to each other, and show them their final score or not. You can even turn off that feedback if you desire. So then you're going to go ahead and start, and it's going to have your students start popping up here, and you'll see their answers. So let me show you the results, what that looks like. And when we're in this results tab, it's showing you only the one that you've done the most recently. But you can go back by going to reports, and you can see everything. So I'm going to go back to when I gave aseptic transfer quiz. And again, I gave that in January. So if you're looking for it, you can search. But I just, it was last semester, so I remember this is my first one that I give. And what you have here is your list of students who took the quiz. You can show their names or you can hide their names, and their score percentage. Now, I scored this out of 5 points in Blackboard, so I'm just going to switch that to score number. Down here, we see the percentage of students that got that question right. And we can even just click and see what that question was, right? So we say students did the best on this question, or equally good on this question. What was this one? So which of these things will you do first? Blah, 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 multiple choice. And my students get to do this with open notes. So that's part of the reason why I time them relatively tightly, because, given the right amount of time, anybody can look up the correct answer in their notes. I want them to have read it. But one thing that I do want you to be aware of is that if you give something that is worth partial credit, right? So here for this question, the right answer is D, C, and B. It will not score partial credit for you. So we see a lot of people chose D. So if you want to give partial credit, that's something that you just have to do manually. Or another thing is, sterilize. I've programmed sterilize to be an appropriate answer, and this student just spelled it incorrectly. So what you would want to do is just keep a close eye on the ones where you've made these short answer style questions. What you see here is each of the students' answers. So here's the one that was spelled incorrectly, and you can even show their names beside it in order to give yourself a little cheat sheet. This person answered this, this person answered this. But again, you don't have to, because green just means they got it right based on what you programmed in. So, for example, when I'm going, this reprogrammed. Okay, so when I'm going through and I'm writing this into Blackboard, this student, for example, would have put beyond the correct response. They have DCB, but they've got more after that. They would get 4.5 points, because I want to give them that partial credit, just because this is a pre-lab quiz. They haven't done the procedure yet, so I'm not gonna ding them for the entire point on that. But again, something that you get to completely be flexible in choosing. And what I want to show you next is this last tab here, which is rooms. On the free version of Socrative, where you store your work, your cloud, is going to be whatever you choose for your room to be called. Unfortunately, we cannot do multiple rooms unless we upgrade to the Pro version. Everything that I do, all of those quizzes that you saw, all of them are completely free. So I've named my room L. Giles, and that allows my students to get into what I have launched at that time. So going back, when we saw this login, if you click on the student login, I queued that up right here, it asks you to put the room name. So in this instance, if you're my student trying to get into my quiz, you're going to put L. Giles. Now it's going to say waiting for the next activity to begin, because I haven't launched anything yet. So the other thing is sometimes I forget to click that orange finish that shows up right here. So sometimes my natural biology students are going to be seeing a quiz meant for my anatomy and physiology students, but they will quickly tell me that that is not the correct one and that I need to launch the new one still. I find too that this is a platform that students are relatively familiar with. There's also an app, so I control mine through the app most often. It is not user-friendly to be writing questions on, but if you just need to get on and launch your quiz, I usually launch mine, when I'm walking to class. Students can also download the app to take your quiz or do whatever exit quiz, exit ticket, space race, whatever it is that you want to launch, but they do not have to. So they can just go to the webpage, Socrative, do the student logon, and that's going to give them that availability. Again, on their device, they're going to see everything. So you don't need to display anything for them, except if you're doing an exit ticket, you're going to have to make the question that you wrote available to them. So you just go to kahoot.com. This is the home page because it automatically logs me in. But if we want to go to my Kahoots, the ones that I've created for my students, you see those here. Now, with Kahoot, again, you can add as many questions as you want. You can add images. So here I'm asking them questions about structures. So I'm going to show you how to edit this. You can create just a brand new one from scratch, and I find it to be pretty user-friendly. And here you see my image. Now with the student version of Kahoot, when they bring it up, what they're going to just see is 4 icons. So they're going to have a red triangle, they're going to have a blue diamond, they're going to have a yellow circle, and they're going to have a green square. So you're going to have to display the questions for your students. So with Socrative, where you can use that pretty easily from remote, you can use it in the classroom and it's going to be exactly the same. With Kahoot, you need to make sure that your students are present and looking at your screen in order to be able to give this question to them. Because if they log on and you're not showing it, then all they're going to see is those 4 colored icons. So here, we're looking at the cross-section of spinal cord, and I'm asking them a question about this diagram. So I can even put images as my answer options instead of text. I can assign points, and I can assign a time limit. Now it does play music during that time, so you're probably going to want to turn that off. Or, I mean, I kind of like it. I turn the volume down so that it's not too distracting, but it's kind of like Jeopardy. So I usually use this as a review game. You could definitely use it as a quiz because you can assign those points, but I find that the music makes it a little bit stressful if it is going to be awarded points for. So if you wanted to add a question, I do not, but I'll show you how to do one. You just click on add the question and you tell it what type of question you want. So if you want true or false or just the multiple choice, which is what I use because these are with the free version, then you just go ahead and click it and it's going to pre-populate almost everything that you need. You can even put links to little videos here in this location. So just like we did with other things, we can copy this question, we can duplicate it as is, which I'm sure is what I did when I was writing all of these questions about the anatomy up here. Or I don't want to keep this blank question, so we're going to go ahead and delete it. And it warns you, which is great because sometimes we click delete on accident, but I truly want to delete this. So here we go. So another thing that you see is that you don't have to award the same amount of points for everything. So here I've given some more points to this. I usually make my last question a more challenging question, and then we have a time limit. So what the students see is they're going to see their progress in relation to their peers. It'll show them the top 5. At the end, it'll award medals and do a cute little like confetti animation. So what I suggest to my students is that they use a pseudonym, or sometimes I invite them to use an appropriate emoji so that they're not putting their real name. So if they are doing really terrible, nobody knows but them. So again, if you're going to give this as a quiz and award points, you can't have them do that unless they use, their student ID or something that you can see that doesn't make sense to everybody else, because you can see how your peers are doing while you're playing a Kahoot. But my students, a lot of them are adult students, so they tend to be more appropriate, but they'll use the bumblebee emoji, and they'll use a flower, and they'll use a skeleton head, so they're pretty nice. When it comes time to play your Kahoot, pretty easy. You just click play, and then you can assign this, but I usually use this teach version. Now, when I'm doing this in the classroom, I literally just project it using the projector on the screen, and we play the game. If I am doing it through Teams during a lecture or Zoom now, I'll share my screen, and my students will get to go through and choose from their own separate devices, because remember, they need to be able to see the question with Kahoot. So here, you can have them work in teams, but if they're remote, or to facilitate the most friendly competition, I usually do player versus player. And turn that down so that we can concentrate. And this is what your students are going to see. So what this has is the students are either going to have the app, or they need to go to kahoot.it in order to play, not .com, which is a mistake that they'll sometimes make if they're unfamiliar. So just make sure that you point that out when you use this tool. Then when they get there, it's going to prompt them to enter the PIN. So similar to Socratic, they can't get into your questions unless they have this PIN. And the only way that they're going to have the PIN is if you display it to them as you would display the questions. So those are going to be populating here, your students' names or their emojis or whatever pseudonym they're using to represent themselves. And then when it's time to play, you just hit start. When you do that, you're going to be able to go through your questions one at a time. And it won't let me start to show you without people in the room, but it's going to allow you to stop in between the questions, talk about the responses, then you can move on to the next one. It's very teacher-paced and very teacher-friendly. So with any other things that you have questions about, I will leave that for the discussion section. I encourage you to go try some of these and just click around and get a feel for how they work. But I'm happy to answer any questions, do any demos. We can do a practice in the discussion section as well, so you can see how Kahoot appears to the students if you'd like. So thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.